Well, joining me on the news at this time to, of course, shed more light on this is Dr. Ambrose Igboke, a public affairs analyst. Thank you for joining me on the news. Let's start off with this. Hundreds of participants in a Malian, of course, national dialogue actually did recommend that military rulers who took power as of 2020 keep power for several more years. Now, what does this reflect of Mali's political space?
I was on your platform and many other television channels when the coup that was sweeping Niger, Burkina Faso, and the euphoria that followed it. I told you specifically that I was not enthusiastic about it because all the history of military coups in Africa have shown that the military guys just come, mouth all kinds of revolutionary promises, and at the end of the day, they become worse than the civilians that they're trying to correct. And I said there was no way that the military guys were better. This is a typical example of my position and my assertion about this matter. These guys came in as revolutionaries and saying they want to change things in Mali. And this was like the fourth coup or the eighth coup in 4 years or so. And it's becoming worrisome that those people who said that we're going to change things for better for Africans are now digging in. And that has been the pattern from the likes of Muammar Gaddafi, from the likes of Paul Biya, from the likes of Robert Mugabe. The list is endless. The people that transmute themselves from the military to civilian. And we have seen that a lot, and we're always digging. They do this kind of thing Mali is doing, add more years to themselves. The next thing, they will constitute a kangaroo conference, and then they will change the constitution, and at the end of the day, they will make themselves life president. And so that is the pattern, and they are just following the trajectory of history of military coups and the self-perpetuation of power in Africa. And this too has shown clearly that even the wave of military coups that are happening in other African countries will follow this pattern.
I mean, they also are suggesting that when elections are eventually held, the junta chief, talking about Colonel Assimi Goita, should be the candidate for the presidency. What do you think this is?
That is, even when we look at the history of the Liberian Civil War, one of the agreements that was reached was that the warlords, the contending warlords will not contest for presidency. And surprisingly, it was not obeyed. People like Charles Taylor went in and contested for the presidency. And so this is also what is happening here. A transition of this nature is not supposed to have the actors of the coup, of the military coup, to be involved. But now it's just an arrangement to perpetuate themselves in power in the guise of a democratically elected process, which is wrong. So you just removing the toga of the military uniform and then putting on a civilian regalia. That does not change the substance of the person or the essence of the person. It's the same military mentality. They are not structured for democracy, and that is what has happened. This, as I said earlier, this has been the pattern, and this transformation of military guys into civilian is the same thing. In our own time in Nigeria here, we remember what happened between 1993 to 1998, where Major General Abacha tried to transmute himself to having 5 political parties and all those kind of things, and trying to make all of them nominate him as a flag bearer. So we have seen the script so many times. It's an old-fashioned script, and it's still, I'm surprised that 50 years, 60 years, 40 years, 30 years down the line, that is still being practiced by the young folks that are coming up in the military status in Africa. As these are things that have been practiced from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and even recently. And we are back to it again, almost 60-something years after most of us got independence. It's a pity that Africa is still in this trajectory.
Now, how would you say is significant is the role of international system in all of this? We've seen countries and, of course, international organizations, impose sanctions and all of that. Any effect so far?
These sanctions are infinitesimal most of the time. They are not very strong sanctions because most of the time the West is involved in exploiting the mineral resources. So whoever is in power, most of the time they don't take care. what occurs is economic exploitation and prosperity. If you don't, if you don't pander to their whims and caprices, they start giving you sanctions and the rest. If you pander to their whims, then they leave you alone and pretend as if you don't, as if you are not there. So it is not the West that will tell us how to run Africa, democracy, and the rest. They just mouth these things because the real deal is about access to your economy. And so if a military man has access to economy, they don't have a problem with that. Other third world countries have started to liberate themselves. I think the Africans are the ones holding themselves down. They should stop pointing fingers to the West, because the West also colonized India. The West colonized Singapore. The West colonized Malaysia, all these other countries. The West also kind of colonized Southern Africa. We can see Brazil emerging. We can see Argentina also trying their best over even Venezuela, that is beleaguered. We can see that they're trying also to come out. Cuba, that has been in the back end for a while. So other countries are trying to emerge. And people we are competitors with, that we have power with Nigeria, like Malaysia, Singapore, Taiwan, and the rest. They've already, they have already left the station, and they are, they are elevating higher. So we are still here, still trying to look up to Britain and America to tell us what to do and not what to do, giving us economic blueprints, and that is the problem we have been having. These guys will not save Africa. It's Africa that will save Africa. So it is time to say, if there is coup and those people are trying to transmit themselves, that African countries should not give them the opportunity so that coups can stop in Africa.
All right. Thank you so much for your time on the news. Dr. Ambrose Igboke, Public Affairs Analyst. Once again, thank you.
Thank you for having me.